Hey there, I'm Albarnie, the Technical Director at Afray Interactive, and in this devlog we're going to be going over some of the technical and art direction that drives SCP-5K. Before that, we have some exciting changes regarding the project to update you all on. Since our last devlog, a lot has happened. We've officially changed the name from SCP Pandemic to SCP-5K, started motion capture efforts for our main characters, and began creating a series of style guides to tie together the look and feel of Area 12. But more on that later. Our big focus for the upcoming update, This Is Why Part 2, is to both improve the AI characters introduced in This Is Why Part 1 and earlier, but also to extend on the lore and level design aspects of the game. As such, our efforts are focused on improving the fidelity of characters and environments, using a mixture of gore, animation, interaction, and art direction. First, I'll be going over some of the interesting tech we've been developing recently and showcasing the team's work on this update so far, and later, our art director Bishop will be explaining the efforts of the art direction and art department. Horror and tactical shooters are built on Gore, which is one of the more important systems we've been developing so far. The system is built on 4 main parts: blood, pose space decals, splatters, and gore meshes/culling. Blood is of course the most obvious way to show the impact of your shot on target. This looks great on most characters, but can be especially useful for characters that can otherwise seem impervious to damage. It can also be used to indicate splashback from close proximity to an exploding friend. Under the hood, in order to make this blood local and reactive, the data is copied into a compact buffer which is then sent to the GPU in an asynchronous texture update. This is super fast compared to traditional techniques like render targets and allows us many data points. Using the points from this texture, the distance is calculated per vertex, and we update the size of the points a couple of times every second to give the effect of blood expanding into clothing. Alternatively, this can also be used to give the effect of bruising under the skin. When combined with a nice texture, the effect looks pretty convincing. However, this blood is very general, so the next step is adding more specific decals. Traditionally, one would use Unreal's deferred decals. Unfortunately, these are prone to sliding around on deforming characters, so we're left to fend for ourselves. Using the same texture from earlier, we can reuse the positions and add in the normal direction of the hit and an extra size in the row of the pixels below. We can then map that to an area on the mesh before it's deformed and still in the A pose. This is useful because if we project the decals before the mesh is deformed, the decals will move with the mesh nicely. A big part of showing the impact of damage is splatters. The classic method, and the method we've used so far, involves simply placing the blood splatter behind the unfortunate recipient and calling it a day. But we can do more. By changing which decals we place depending on the distance, damage and angle, we can get a much more convincing effect. We can then use the fade-in features of Unreal's decals to make it seem like the blood doesn't all hit the surface at once. Blood and decals are all well and good, but what about when you want something to have a bit more impact? We already have dismemberment in the game, which works great for blowing limbs off, but we need something that can really blow a hole in the character. For that, we need to use a blend of the previous 2 techniques and a little bit of ingenuity from the past. In 2009, when Valve released Left 4 Dead 2, it shipped with a new wound system, which was pretty novel at the time. They used ellipsoids in the pose space to cut holes in the character and place new authored meshes there. We've gone a similar route with our system, but with the fidelity one would expect from a modern game. Left 4 Dead 2 shipped with 2 wounds at once per character, but with the system we have here, we can easily do 10 to 20 at once. The gore meshes to go in the holes are authored per character type, meaning humanoids get one set with individual gore meshes for more unique characters. So far, one of our talented creature artists, Sterling, has been working on the gore meshes for the Resonator. This begins with creating the skeletal structure, muscles and cartilage, which is used as reference for creating the individual wounds. Overall, the system comes together quite nicely and should help to make the combat that more satisfying. Of course, this is not the most advanced Gore system out there, especially with recent games, namely the Dead Space remake and Dead Island 2, being shipped with some pretty groundbreaking tech. However, the system we've created works very well for our scale and scope. Our UX and gameplay programmer Blake Kyle has been working on documents and computer systems to allow for interactive lore integration into the game. These systems allow for us to implement detailed containment procedures, dossiers, and notes, which have full support for localization, interactive, stored together in one place. You can also collect important mission information like codes, notes, etc. so that you don't have to have a physical pen and paper at your desk at all times. Blake Kyle has been working with our art director, Bishop, in order to implement a concise and consistent UI design for these elements so that they are not only easy to use, but pretty as well. Recently, I've been working on a new third-person animation system, which better uses third-person animations as a base for blending the movement of our first-person animations. Previously, we would essentially take the third-person animations for the bottom half of the character and use the first-person animations for the top half. Unfortunately, this meant that characters felt stiff, particularly when sprinting. Now, we use the original mocap as our neutral pose and then apply animations from the first-person rig relative to the weapon. With sprinting, vaulting, and other complex movements, this will make the divide much less obvious. Alongside this, the IK code for foot placement on surfaces has also been rewritten in C++ with some cool new features. When standing on ledges or thin surfaces, characters will attempt to place their feet on the edge of the surface, which greatly reduces instances of characters seemingly standing in the air. With our partnership with Lost Legion Studios, we've started on sourcing our own high-quality character motion capture. Our recent shoot was covering the main human character animations, which should help greatly in immersing you in the world when combined with our new systems. The anomalies, of course, have been a big focus, with the bulk of the attention so far going towards SCP-173, the Resonators, and SCP-098, as well as a brand new enemy. One of the new anomalies you'll find in This Is Why Part 2 resides within the cinemas of Area 12. The theatre anomaly was written and will be submitted to the wiki by our very own writing team. Essentially, the anomaly can travel between any display surface, and unfortunately for you, that includes your eyes. To bring this anomaly to life, we had to make our own pathfinding solution that grabs screens in the area and turns them into a node network. The anomaly uses this network to navigate the facility and will correctly take different routes when certain screens are turned off. There is still a lot of visual effects, graphics, audio and hallucinations to be developed for the anomaly, and we plan to have this done by the time the update releases. For enemies bound to the physical realm, we've implemented a motion warping solution, which allows for movement animations to be remapped across different distances and heights. This is particularly useful for vaulting, jumping, and climbing, where a specific section of the animation is specified for warping. This is alongside updates to 098 and the Resonator, with systems in place for them to recognise dead bodies for a quick snack while they are idle. Last of all, SCP-1262 is starting to take on a more dangerous role with the Spitter, an elongated growth that spits sharp shards of resin at deadly speed. The 3D and animation assets for this creature are already done, and we're currently working on the audio and programming. Approach at your own peril. The 3D art and animation team, as always, has been doing incredible work, both in adding new content to the game as well as updating older content to our newer stylings. Our new character artists, John and Dean, have been working on overhauls for both the FBI UIU and SCP site security. These characters come with variations for gear and skin colour, and we'll be working on special circumstantial variants for each. On top of that, on the weapons side of things, we've got an AUG, an SA-58 FAL, in addition to a redo of the Mossberg 590 and MP5, alongside the new MP5SD and MP5K. The latter of these is interesting as it's our first non-stocked SMG. This brings a different feel to ADS and recoil that can lead to some nice scrappy firefights. We also fixed the M1014 being shown as the 4-round variant. Additionally, our good friend Charles has done a complete overhaul of all of the muzzle and casing effects, with realistic gas, flashes and compensators. With these guns finished, we'll be slowing down production on weapons to focus all of our resources on the map and anomalies. That's about all we can share with you for now on the technical side of things. If you want to help bring this game to life, we're currently hiring for AI, UX and backend developers. For now, I'm going to hand it over to our art director, Trey Bishop, to cover some of the art direction aspects of the game we are currently working on.